Hi, and welcome to Mark's Motivational Podcast for another Authors Tuesday. It's great to be joined today by Bob. Sorry, your surname again, Bob?
McLaughlin.
Bob McLaughlin.
Yeah.
So thanks a million for joining me today, Bob.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks a million. So we'll probably start off the podcast today. Just can you tell the listeners a little bit of background about yourself and your writing as well, please? Would be great.
Sure. I'll get this business out of the way. It usually comes up sooner or later, but apparently I have an accent. Just for the record, I've been living in Ireland since early 2006. I'm married to a local woman originally from Carlow. We live in Callan, just outside Kilkenny City, and I'm an Irish citizen. But I'm originally from the States, from Ohio. And I really enjoy living here, best country in the world. And I think the reason I still have this accent is because I can't sing, I can't play an instrument, can't learn a second language. I think I'm tone deaf, and that's why this accent lingers on. That being said, I've been writing, I think I was 23 years old, and I went into a library, which I would, like many people, love to browse libraries, and I found a book on journaling. And I was at a point where I had little time on my hands, so I started journaling. I started listening to classical music, and I joined a classic book club then in my early 20s. I'm still journaling now every day, more or less, even if it's only to say it's nice weather. It's a great way to explore what's going on in life, in my own life, and the things I've done right or think I might do wrong. I think it's helped my writing style as well. Then probably in my late 30s, I started to write some poetry. And in my early 40s, for 1 year, I wrote a poem every day. Sometimes it was just 2 lines long.
Great.
Other times I put some effort into it. And then at the end of that year, I wrote poetry every once in a while, mostly after I'd had a moving experience, seen a great play or something really creative, or been around some people who really sparked some kind of life inside of me, and I would come home and I'd write a poem about it. So, and these are mostly free verse poems. I think probably less than 5% of the poems that I've written have followed some kind of academic format. Then, probably in my late 40s, I started to write some short stories, and I've continued off and on to write short stories, anywhere from some flash fiction of 400 to 1,000 words to I wrote a couple of 5,000 word short stories. And then just recently, I finished a memoir, because if you haven't noticed, I'm old and I'm worried about what happens after I'm gone. And I don't really believe in an afterlife. I'm a from ashes to ashes person. So I wrote down a memoir from when I was born to when I was 18. And it's too long. It's 110,000 words. And it's also, some things are very personal, maybe not of interest to the general public, but I also think there's some good stories in there and reasonably well written. And then now I'm turning back to a novel that I started about, in 2016, I started it, and I hope to have that finished by the end of this year. This is my book of poetry. It's called Man Poems, 100
Very
poems
good.
in there, short and
Brilliant,
long. There's one poem in there that seems to have got some airtime. Kilkenny the Arts Office puts out a broadsheet. It was in the Kilkenny broadsheet
That's great.
2 years ago. They used it during the Arts Festival. It was made into a poster and put in the window of one of the local bookstores. It was in a poetry night over in one of the libraries in Clonmel on April 7th, there's a fundraiser for Ukraine happening in St. Canice's Cathedral, which is one of the
Mm.
most beautiful cathedrals in the country. And if you know Stephen Ray, the Oscar-nominated actor from Crying Game, he's the
Mm.
MC, and he's gonna music and poetry, and he's gonna read one of my poems on that night.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Uh,
Yeah.
so they're getting a little bit of airtime. Then this is my first book of short stories,
Very
26
nice.
of
Yeah.
them, sitting by the lake. Um, and all my books are self-published on KDP through Amazon. I did
Great.
all
Yeah.
the editing myself. I did all the formatting for publication, uh, designed the covers myself.
Brilliant.
And so and I did an okay job on that. The bottom line to all of that is it didn't cost me anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're
But
unique to yourself as well, Bob. Like they're totally unique to you. Like, you know.
could be, yes, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I belonged to a writing group for a number of years, and we published an anthology. Uh,
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
and I have a couple of short stories in there. And then this is my memoir, Remembrances of Lost Time, which I chose the title. I've just finished listening to 150 hours of Marcel Proust's book, um, which is called Remembrances of Things Past. It also has another title, since it's a French book. It's translated into In Search of Lost Time. So what I did is I stole the first word, remembrances, from one translation,
Yeah.
and I stole the end of another translation, and I came up with Remembrances of Lost Time. And in Amazon, when anyone searches for Proust, this book shows up right of all his book is in 7 parts, shows up right in the middle of it. So it gets a little bit of airtime like that. And some
That's
people may
great.
have, if they scroll down to see Robin McLaughlin on the bottom, they may have ordered the thinking that they were getting Marcel Proust, not to take anything
Yeah.
away from it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
just recently, about a month ago, I took some of my flash fiction and bits and bobs. It's got 28 flash fiction stories in there, which seem to be popular among people who live busy lives and they want to pull out a book at lunchtime and be able to read a couple of stories before they go back to work, and kind of take them out of the difficulties of the day and put them into another realm.
Very
So
clever.
that's
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of marketing for them. When I finished this novel, which is called The Spa Resort, it's set at a spa, and what I did is I took the protagonist, the main character, is an extremely shy, relatively young man. He's shy to the point where you should get therapy for it, and but he really is a romantic. And I put him working as a massage therapist in a very large 5-star, very expensive spa surrounded by women. And so things happen. Um,
Hmm.
and it's an exploration of friendship with women, uh, working friendships with women, relationships with women, romance with women, and just a touch of the physical sexual part, because I have grandchildren, so I don't want
Yeah.
to go too far with that. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I know what
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that
yeah.
sounds absolutely amazing. I love the part where you're saying about the journal. I think that's a really great thing. You know, I like I've done that myself. Like so, you know, like brain dump every morning, 3 full scap pages of whatever.
Mm,
It's really good, isn't it? It's a good way of doing it, isn't it?
yes, yeah, yeah. And I expanded that a bit. Oh, what I do now, thanks to COVID, I
Mm,
used to, I was a book a month reader, and
right.
then once I moved to Ireland here, joined a couple book groups. So I was reading maybe 3 books a month. And
Yeah.
since COVID, what I'm doing is I get up every morning and I walk into town and back. It's 6 kilometers, but I listen
Yeah.
to an audiobook in the mornings. And I
Mm.
often choose the books that would be difficult to read, some of the classics and all that, because listening to them, the reader can really enhance and ensure that you
Yeah.
get more of the stuff that might be difficult to read if you're just sitting there. And
Mm.
then I go through my day. My mornings are done. I'm retired, so I have to earn my keeps. I do chores, fix things around the house. I
Mm.
built a wall, a stone wall, things like that to earn my keep. Um,
Bits and
and then
bobs,
yeah,
bits
yeah,
and
bits and
bobs.
bobs. Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah.
I love
Then
that
in the
concept. That's brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah.
then in the
Mm.
afternoon, I either write or I try to learn a bit about writing. And Zoom
Mm.
classes have been very helpful with that. And I
Yeah.
read a lot about writing. I think oh, I've read it since I moved here. I think I've read how I keep. I'm a list maker, so I read 54 books on writing, written by some really good people and some that weren't so good. Uh, well,
Yeah.
one of the most recent ones I've written is uh, Nabokov, who wrote Lolito. This is a book. It's Nabokov's favorite word is mauve. It's a book on the statistics of writing. Oh, like
Wow.
Hemingway said, write short sentences. But it turns out that he's got some sentences in his writings that are like 40 or 50 words long. Those are not short sentences.
No.
Um, it talks about the reading level on the New York Times list. Now, almost 50% of the books that are on the New York Times bestseller list are written for people with a reading level of a 12-year-old. So
Wow.
little,
Yeah.
little things like that are use of adjectives and
Mm.
so it gives statistics on writing. The balance of short and long sentences on average is about 30%. So I can look at my own writing, and if it turns
Mm.
out I've got really a lot of short sentences, I question myself and say, do I really want it like that? Because that speeds up the story. Or
Mm.
when everybody else is writing at about 30% short sentences. So it's been helpful for that.
Yeah.
And then
That sounds great. Yeah.
my own reading level in the evenings, once I'm all done here, if my wife uh, uh, doesn't need me for anything, um,
Mm.
I sit and read. And I've been able, I used to say like I got 3 books a month done. Now, last year I got finished up 134 books. And the 2 years before that, about 110 books each year.
Yeah.
And I think that's been probably the single biggest help to my writing is that
Mm.
um, seeing how others are writing. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to now get better at telling. I know a good book from a bad book, but sometimes I don't know exactly why. So I'm trying to
Mm.
learn more about why a bad book went wrong and what makes a
Yeah.
good book good. And that's keeping me interested in my reading.
That's great because you know what they say, if somebody's really good at something and if you try and match what they do, it can only improve yourself, really, can't it?
Yeah,
Uh,
yes, yeah,
yeah, like
yeah, yeah,
it's
that,
like if some like really good writers like are bestsellers in the New York Times or what you said earlier on, like if you look and read their books, you can only improve yourself, can't you?
yes. I heard the same thing about
Yeah.
music. A lot of the great
Mm.
musicians all start out as copy musicians, playing other
Yeah.
people's music, and then
Mm.
they kind of picked up the parts they liked and didn't like and started some things
Yeah.
on their own. And who'd have thought
Mm.
that some of the Beatles were playing classical music at one time? So,
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
great. Yeah, because yeah, so that's great, Bob. And can I just ask you, like, what kind of motivates you when you're writing, like, through COVID? What could you say kind of kept you motivated?
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I think part of it is that when I was younger, I used to write, and I worked a very busy job. I was a until I was oh until I was 46. I was a quality manager for a plastics company, and it was very busy. Calls
Mm.
in the evening, working holidays, all that for crises, but I would write every Saturday morning. But I'd make it about half the day, and then I just get an itch to be around people. Uh, and So I was always struggling between wanting to be with people and wanting to write. Um,
mm,
I always thought that you could write a book, or you could live a book, um, or you could read a book. And
mm.
I'm at a point in my life now where I've lived a book enough, I think, and
Yeah,
I'm enjoying reading. So the writing part is what I want to do with my life. Is I don't necessarily want to travel or go to parties and all that. And COVID helped me with that. I'm enjoying my own company, and the way I enjoy my own
mm,
company best is by writing. Um, and
yeah,
and even the editing part. People say they hate the editing, but maybe it's the analytical side of me. I like looking at my writing. What I do is I do a couple of drafts, then I run it through a text to speech app, and I
very
listen to
good.
my stories, and
Mm,
I can hear where I've repeated words or used too many adjectives, or um, kind of not got my point across, or gotten across too many times. Uh, and then after I made adjustments to that, I throw it into Grammarly, which tells me where to put the commas and where I shouldn't have had it, and um, correct some of my spelling and little things like that that would make, I think often when I read a book and I see words misspelled or improper grammar, I think that's not a sign of a true professional. So,
mm, yeah, yeah.
which is what
That's
I
a
aspire to.
yeah, yeah. Like that's a really good strategy you mentioned there. Like the way you do that. So that's really helpful for anybody that's listening today who's only new to writing books. So that's brilliant, Bob. I love that you put it through. And you can listen back, because I think a lot of people now, when you mention audiobooks, like to kind of make the book into an audiobook. Have you ever done that yourself, or thought of doing that yourself, Bob?
No, that seems to be the popular area over the last
Mm,
well, maybe a year or 2 years, and it doesn't take too much in the way of equipment. Uh,
mm,
but I think there's probably a problem in that to read an audiobook, I've listened to some written or some spoken by the authors, and it's maybe
mm,
50-50. Some of the authors shouldn't be in their books. Um,
mm.
just like some
Yeah,
poets shouldn't be reading their poetry, but
yeah.
but but some do a pretty good job and some of a great job. But there have always been, and I used to listen to audiobooks via tapes from the
Mm,
library when I was in my 30s, and they were all actors that did it then. And I think
yeah.
now it's a viable source of income for actors to do audiobooks, and I think there's just not enough actors to go around for the books that are there. But yeah, it is. A
True.
couple of
Yeah.
people have
Yeah.
asked me, have I thought about audiobooks? And certainly, it used to be you'd write a book,
Mm,
and then when Kindle came out, then people were making digital versions,
yeah.
and now it seems people are making digital versions and maybe not having a paperback. And now hardbacks seem to be coming out again,
Mm,
and people are willing to pay for a hardback. And then audiobooks. I think it's my own statistic, but it seems like when I see a book that I go to buy, maybe 1 out of 5 of them have audio versions now. And some of the
mm,
independent authors I know, like Pam Lucky, who's out of Dublin. There's a lot of authors who have just started publishing the past 5 years, and they're now turning to audiobooks. And
mm.
so yeah, it's certainly a consideration, but not for me, not this year.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, no, it's good because me myself personally, I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks through the pandemic, because you know that there's a really useful app called BorrowBox. It's done by the libraries, where
Yes,
it goes straight to your phone. So that's a really good
yes,
one as well for yourself or anybody that's listening. And so, how many books have you written yourself? Again, like I know you mentioned a few of them.
Four,
It's four,
four,
four. Yeah,
four books. Yes,
yeah,
four
yeah,
books. Inclusion in one. Uh, I had some stories included in this collection of
mm,
short stories for my writing group, and
yeah,
hopefully a fifth book on the way by the end of the year. I'm looking for. My wife just retired. She was the secondary school principal, and she's just
yeah,
retired 2 weeks ago. So my life has been kind of taken up with clearing a path for her and making sure
yeah,
that would help her get sorted. But just today, I printed out my first draft of my novel, and I'm looking forward to spending time on it on a daily basis. And
brilliant.
and for- because it's just what I love to do.
Mm,
The goal is to come up with a good book that others will enjoy. And I think there's two kinds of books. There's millions of kinds of books, but there's some books that um, people like to read for entertainment. You know, a detective book, a murder book, a romance book, and then there
mm,
are these literary fiction books, which can be some of those, but those kinds of books um, give a person a chance to explore through the reading of the book some
mm,
areas that either they haven't dealt with in their own life, or they dealt with and it didn't turn out well, or that they're still curious about. And I think that's what constitutes literary fiction. Um, I'm not I'm not fooling myself to think that I'm a John Banville, but I would like to write a book that's reasonably entertaining, with an
mm.
occasional uh, thought in it that people might carry through with them after they put the book down for the day. So,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
so,
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you did say they're available on Amazon. Are they available anywhere else, Bob? Like, can you get them
that's
any bookshops?
all through
Just
Amazon. I went
yeah.
into my local bookshop where I could drop books off there, and I saw all the people I know who have uh, published books through Poolberg Press and all that, but their books are still there. People
Mm,
don't seem to go to the local writers area too often. So I what I would like to do is there's see to self-publishing. You have to learn and put time into things, and there are ways that you can go and get your book on a bookseller's list, uh, and that's on a things to do list for me. And then
great.
also I have a web page which I haven't I built it in 2018, and I
Mm,
started keeping as using as a occasional blog site. So I haven't
great
updated with
stuff.
that too often, but I do have. If you go to writingrobert.com, that's my web page, and there's three tabs here. One of the tabs is books, and if you click on that, it'll take you to each one of my books and a link to Amazon,
Great stuff. Yeah,
where the book
yeah,
resides. Yeah. So,
yeah, yeah. So if you
and
want to
there,
share, oh, sorry, Bob. If you'd like to share your links with me, and I can put them on the show notes for
sure,
people to find as well, that would be great.
sure, sure.
Great
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
it's a reasonable. That was part of my marketing effort uh, to learn how to build a website, and I
Mm,
used again. I paid for the license. I think it cost me 120 a year. I had to
mm,
pay for the .com site, and so I think I pay 150 euros a year to maintain that. But I used all the um, free software from WordPress, and I came up
mm.
with a reasonably good-looking, functional site that even someone with just a little bit of computer knowledge is able to put together. So, and there are, it's a blessing and it's a curse. There are tons of information about how to do anything you'd like to do, both with building a blog site, a website, publishing your own books, uh, finding editors, all that on YouTube. But the problem is that there's so much information in there, and anybody can put things in there. It's not a problem of finding information; it's a problem of finding reliable, good
Yeah.
information. So,
The right stuff.
and I,
Yeah.
yeah, and I might put a
Yeah.
plug in. Derek Murphy is really comprehensive in all areas of self-publishing and also writing books. And he's an interesting guy himself. He travels the world. He lives in Airbnbs around the world, and he writes, and then
Okay.
he does a podcast on his own with advice, usually about once every week or two. And there's also Mark Dawson does a podcast, and he is very, very good. He has a guy from used to be with BBC doing all his technical work for him. He made over €1 million or $1 million self-publishing his own detective books and
Wow.
teaching courses. And he's now an advisor for Kindle Direct Publishing and Amazon because he was so successful at that. And he used to be a solicitor.
Wow.
Solicitor turned author just 10 years ago. So,
That's a great success story, isn't it?
yes, yeah.
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 Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. It just shows you, like, once you keep going with things, and it's very important, isn't it? Like, to be keep plugging away. You're gonna eventually do well from things like this. So that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Like, we'll definitely, the listeners, check out the podcast. What's the names again, Bob? Just for
It's Mark Dawson, Dawson,
yeah.
and then also Derek Murphy. Both of them, if you just put them into YouTube, they both come up, and you'll see lots of their podcasts with advice for writers, the whole spectrum. So
That's great. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that, Bob. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. It's great talking today. And kind of, what's your favorite kind of books to read yourself, Bob? Like, what would your favorite books, and I suppose, who influenced you most? Like, the type of authors that have influenced you.
Well, if I meet and know of writers here in Ireland, I try to read their books to support them, and also to see what the average writer, or not an international bestseller writer, but a good writer, writes. So I read a fair amount of those kinds of books, but also I like every time I read a book, I make a list and I rate the book and the author.
Great stuff. Yeah.
There's Saul Bellow. He's an old writer from 60s and 70s and 80s, but he's an excellent writer. He writes stories about down and out people in big cities in the States. There's Muriel Spark, who wrote The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie. I like books who write about everyday events, but they use high language. You might even call it language of the aristocrats, because what they do is they write with a lot of sarcasm, and they say sarcasm is one of the highest forms of humor.
That's right.
You have to be careful who you use it with, otherwise you could get into trouble.
Yeah.
And Martin Hayes. I read a lot of biologies and autobiographies, or biographies and autobiographies. And Martin Hayes just wrote his autobiography, the fiddle player from Clare.
Yeah.
And it's called Shared Notes. And sure, there's a little bit about him boasting about drugs and alcohol and women, but I think the publisher probably made him put that in there. The rest of it's a very honest, sweet book about growing up in Clare and his love of music and his family. Great book. And then there's another author called Neil Williams, who wrote This Is Happiness. He lives also, I think he lives in Clare, but he writes beautiful books that have tension in them, but they have happy endings. Imagine that, a book with a happy ending. And he gets away with it.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah. And
yeah.
I like books where they do a good job of noticing small things. Um,
Hmm.
they either in a person's profile or the way they walk, and that are unusual. They don't use cliches, and they have a unique way of looking uh, at us, at humanity. So,
Mm, yeah. Yeah, because I love doing this part of the podcast because you get some great advice on different books. So that's great, Bob. Thanks,
oh,
thanks very much for
yeah,
that.
yeah. I might
Yeah,
mention one other thing.
yeah.
Um, I, when I buy books, I never ask for an autograph from the author, but this is the only book that I have asked for an autograph. Steven Pinker, who's a
Okay.
psycholinguist at Harvard, he writes books about linguistics, but he does
Oh,
it in a
brilliant.
way that you can understand what he's saying. And
Mm,
he was at Trinity College doing a lecture, and we were lucky enough to go see him. And I got he's my hero. I got my picture taken with him, and I got him to sign my
cool.
book.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
then one last book, you all know this one, The Little Prince. And not
Yeah.
to say too much about it, but I used to keep a box of these. And this is when I was in my 20s, 30s, and into my 40s. I seem to have stopped once I moved here. But when I made a new friend and we got a chance to talk at a level where there's a certain amount of intimacy, um, we were probably sharing too much information, as they say.
Mm,
I used to go and give them this book, which is in less than 100 pages. It has some real good outlooks on life and how people treat each other and how we would hope to treat each other. So,
oh, that's a great point. Yeah, I must have a look at that. That sounds great. So, and who's the author of that, Bob?
well, I was afraid you were going to make me say that. Anton de
Oh,
Saint
sorry.
Expiry. It's like your last name,
Yeah.
easy to see, hard to pronounce. So, there's an
Yeah, yeah.
airport outside of a city in France that's named after him.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, because it's probably a Huguenot name because my name is a Huguenot and it's like French Canadian. That's what the ancestry is.
Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
interesting. Yeah,
I
but
mentioned one thing. I mentioned one
okay.
thing about names. Um, I was born Robert Allen Parsons, the second,
Okay.
named after my father. In
Yeah.
1996, I got married in the States to a good woman who I got divorced from, friendly divorce, because I wanted
Mm,
to change jobs and move here. Um, but she was a speech therapist in private practice. She taught the local college. Everybody knew her, and she couldn't change her last name, which was McLaughlin. So in
okay.
1996, when we got married, I took her last name, and
Okay.
it's too tricky to get rid of once you do something like that for a man. So I'm still a
Yeah.
McLaughlin now. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
That's an interesting story. That's a first for me. I never came across
yeah.
that before. Like,
Every time
yeah.
I go through customs, the customs agents always say Rob McLaughlin. They say that's a good Irish name.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, great. And yeah, that's brilliant. It's been great talking to you, Bob. I really appreciate you coming on, and I wish you all the success in your books going forward. And I definitely share the links, and I put them on the show notes for people to find.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
It was very
yeah,
nice talking to you, and thanks for
yeah,
taking the time out
yeah.
of I think what must be a busy schedule on your part.
That is, but thank you very much. And maybe one or two things more, if that's okay. Your favorite movies as well. Do you have any favorite
Yeah.
movies?
I used to say that when I talk to people, they say when you meet someone, you don't really meet them, you meet their representative. So after a
Yeah,
while, I'd say what their favorite movies are to see what they're really like. And
yeah.
I'm old, but um, the movie The Graduate with Dustin
Mm,
Hoffman and Simon and Garfunkel music throughout. Uh, I must have
great
seen
film.
that literally 40 times, maybe
Mm,
probably more, and listen to the soundtrack always. And then the other one is called Harold and Maude. It's a cult movie. also from about 1968 with Cat Stevens music throughout.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Uh,
brilliant.
and and so both of them are music movies, and both of
Mm,
them are about a young man trying to make his life different.
mm,
That's what they say at the beginning. They're not quite sure what they want to do with their lives, but they just want it to be different. And then the
yeah.
rest of the movies follow suits with that. And both of those affected me quite a bit, and I'm sure consciously and unconsciously in my choices throughout life. So,
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Funny you should say Cat Stevens because I was only playing a song there the other day. Cats in the
ah,
Cradle. Cats in the
oh
Cradle.
yes,
You know,
yes,
it's a great song.
yes,
It's a
yes,
great song. Yeah. I was actually playing it. I played for an old folks' home, playing a bit of guitar for them. You know, so
ah,
they wanted that song, so it was really cool. It's just funny
oh
the way
yes, yeah.
Cat Stevens is really really good, and that fits out nicely to our last question. Your favorite music? What would your favorite music be?
Oh, like everyone says, all kinds of music, but
Yeah.
trad music, traditional music. Uh,
Mm,
the group Solus, Bioga. Um,
mm.
I love the harp. And since we live in Kilkenny, we have 54 pubs here, often with trad musicians in it. Uh,
Yeah.
it's great for
Yeah.
that. And even the group Keela, which some of their music gets a little bit repetitive, but it's great music if you like to dance.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
especially if you can't dance, it's
Yeah.
okay because it's this kind of dancing with it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No, I love Kilkenny. I love going down to Kilkenny myself. Like there's so much good pubs, like great crack in them. Like Matt the Miller's is a great
oh
spot, isn't
yeah,
it?
yes,
It's
yeah,
great.
for
Yeah.
everyone, yeah, the
Yeah.
tourists and
Yeah.
locals and people
Brilliant.
from around the country. Yeah,
Yeah. And then before that, go to the castle, have a look around the castle.
yeah, yeah.
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 I used to.
Because
I retired, and then I took a hard diploma in tourism marketing, and
okay.
I got a job at Kilkenny Castle for a
Okay.
season until I retired fully, and I was there telling Americans about Irish history,
There you go.
which
Brilliant.
I
Yeah. Brilliant.
uh,
Yeah, brilliant. Because I'll tell you a funny story. After I was talking to you there the last time before we organised the podcast, I actually wrote a song about Kilkenny. Like, because
oh,
you
dear.
reminded me of all the great times in Kilkenny when I went down,
Oh
like,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
yeah, so
yeah,
yeah, it's good crack.
yeah.
Yeah, so is there anything else I haven't asked you, Bob, before we go, that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Um, mm, I think that's it. Other than um, my life now, I'm very happy that I get a chance to write.
Yeah.
How I like to socialize is talking or sharing time with people who also like to write.
Excuse me.
And the arts office here in Kilkenny has done a wonderful job of bringing things up a notch and offering lots of classes. And what happens
Mhm.
is, like any other class, now that we're back in person, uh, you get a chance to talk about writing from the parking lot into the class, during the break
Mm.
at the class, and on the way out. And sometimes, one at least a couple of times, we form some little groups to help and support each other to talk
Great.
about um, things that are going on. And it seems to be still the human connection is a great way to go and learn and to also to share a passion. Um, and in this
Yeah.
case, it's writing. So
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, because you were saying you're in a writers group. I joined one there about a year and a half ago. It's called the Inkies. It's really good because you work out prompts every Saturday, where like
yes,
you kind of they give you a prompt, a picture, and text in the meeting, and the stories come out of these these sessions
oh,
is great. They're really
oh
great, good,
yes,
aren't they? Yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, when you don't
yeah,
have time to actually kind of contemplate and work on something all day long, you just have to come up with something. Often
yeah,
there
yeah.
are some wonderful pieces of writing that happen like that. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. No,
I'll,
I'd
I'll tell you
recommend
once
anybody.
I'll
Sorry.
tell you one story. I was in a group like that, and we were given a prompt to talk about our fathers. And
Okay.
actually, I made up a story about my father, but none of it was true. Uh, but there's this one woman who said that when she was younger, and this was true, her father never touched her. And what she used to do is she used to play with her toys while he sat in his chair reading the evening newspaper. She used to lean up against his leg while she played with her toys. And that was the touch that she got from her father. How many people would tell you something like that, just while you're having coffee with them or something?
Yeah.
You get the chance in these writing groups, people will
Mm.
share some stories that are really
Yeah.
moving,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sometimes terribly funny, but often intimate stories that you wouldn't get from them in other places or other environments.
Yeah, no, it's great. It really is great.
Mm.
Because it's funny, the stories you kind of come out with yourself. Like, I'll give you one quick example. So I've wrote my first children's book there the year before last.
Oh,
Well, yeah. So I self-published it as well on Amazon. But
yes.
there's just it's a children's book, but out of the writers group, I got a character called Spin Man. It's a superhero. It's really fun. Like, and every week with different prompts, you add a bit onto it. It's really real fun. It's really fun, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
had I I had I have two sons in the States,
yeah,
and they when they were young, I took classes in early childhood education, and one of the classes
mm,
was on early childhood literature, children's books, and it's
yeah,
really tough to write a good children's book. Um,
hmm,
it's to find one and make it click and all that is
yeah,
it's not an easier option. It's a different option than writing
mm,
poetry or short stories or a novel. It's
yeah,
one of the types of writing that requires certain special skills that not everyone has.
yeah. I know. I'm glad I got it because I had all
Yeah.
these stories that I made up for the kids throughout the
Oh,
years, bedtime
yeah.
stories. So I can boil them into a book, and it's great for the kids to get a
Ah,
great laugh out of as
yes,
well.
yes, yes.
Really, really good. Well,
Yeah.
but listen, I can't thank you enough, Bob, for coming on the podcast. It was great talking to you. Great meeting you.
Yes, I look forward to running into one of these days in Dublin.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So that was Bob McLaughlin, everybody. Thanks a million, Bob, for coming on again. And thanks, everybody, for listening to Mark's Motivational Podcast for another Authors Tuesday. So thanks again, Bob, and talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.